Are you ready to break free from a conventional life and achieve financial independence through your version of tiny living, but you're feeling stuck trying to figure out the money part? Does the pressure to conform to societal norms make it even more difficult to embrace an unconventional lifestyle? Well, you're in the right place. I'm Laura Lynch, host of the Less House, More Moolah podcast, where every Thursday I'll bring you captivating interviews with individuals who have successfully made the transition to tiny living. They defied expectations and are thriving in their unique lives. We'll also dive deep into industry resources to address common financial concerns on your tiny journey. Together, we'll explore the emotional and practical aspects of pursuing an alternative lifestyle. I will describe a clear framework for project planning and cash flow management. Our goal is to intentionally build financial security and make a positive impact through our alternative American dream. So gear up for an exciting and empowering journey to create a life that truly resonates with you. Let's dive into today's episode and take the first steps towards financial independence and purpose through tiny living. Hey there, Laura Lynch, Less House, More Moolah podcast. You've got just me today. I've been getting some questions and really thinking through where people are getting stuck on this journey to tiny. And so today I wanted to create a little bit of confidence around the notion of cash flow. Cash flow is really important for us in our journey to tiny because it certainly is really easy to consume all the YouTube content and see all the Instagram posts and get really dreamy about tiny living. In fact, I was just at a conference earlier this week, and it was announced to the audience that the tiny house advisor was there, and that sparked so much curiosity. And so many people came up to talk to me about tiny living. And their first question was about, do I have a tiny house, and the story behind that. And on another conversation, I'm going to talk about some of the limiting beliefs that I feel like people are encountering when they're thinking about tiny living. But one of those very practical limiting beliefs or places where we get stuck is on the idea of how to make the money part work. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So in the financial planning world, we call it cash flow. And very simply, cash flow is all of the money flowing into your household and all of the money flowing out of your household. And some of it hopefully is getting stuck in your household, which is increasing your net worth over time. And really, for those going tiny, it is that money getting stuck when it comes from the normal life, and then you choose a lower cost way to live moving forward that allows us to create additional financial security and impact in our lives. So we can kind of imagine it like water. Money and water are energy. They're flowing into our lives. It's flowing out of our lives. And hopefully we are stockpiling some along the way. So as we think of cash flow as money flowing in and money flowing out, the money that flows in, of course, we know comes from W-2 salary. It can come from self-employment. It can come from gig work. It can come from inheritances. It can come from lots of different places. That's our income. And then it flows out of our household in the form of expenses. And we have fixed expenses. Our house is often a fixed expense if we have it on a fixed mortgage. Our insurance on our house is often fixed for a period of time, and it goes up periodically. Our taxes often aren't increasing. So that is fixed for a year and then probably changing the next year. The maintenance on our house is more of a flex expense, it changes over time. Our groceries, our entertainment, our travel, our holiday spending, the way that we take care of ourselves with our memberships or massages or what have you, all of those subscriptions that we pay for, the way that we might pay other service providers to take care of things that we'd rather delegate, obviously our children or our pets. These are all of the things that we are spending money on. Hopefully, from time to time, we're giving a little bit of money away. So, these are all the forms of expenses and things that are flowing out of our cash flow. Now, when we make a transition to tiny, it is often a little different than making a transition from one house to another in the normal sense or regular sense. People that move for a job, for example, will often go from one mortgage to the next, which means they're not having to come up with the full purchase price. They're going from one loan to another. There is certainly some pieces of that can be complex when getting financing. If one is going from a rental to a home purchase, you have to come up with a down payment and you have a period of time in your rentals to save up for that. But when transitioning to tiny, we often see that we need maybe a larger amount of cash to come up with first before we cash out of our home if we own one. In addition, we have to figure out where we're going to be placing, parking, or driving our tiny home. So there are those considerations. And then if we do get money out of our former living arrangement by selling a house, that may come later on in the process. And oftentimes when people are going tiny, they're changing more than just their roof. So they're probably or often not buying a tiny house just down the road from their regular house. They may be using the tiny house as a vehicle to change geographies or to travel. So there may come other changes, like career changes that are made to adapt to working remotely, or maybe taking a job in another place, or maybe the opportunity to dial back work because of the lower expenses. So, certainly, there are life changes that are happening at the same time. So, that's why the transition to tiny can be maybe a little different than the transition just across town or across country for a job from one house to another. So, there are a lot of considerations in this flow of cash in our lives when we do a tiny transition. One of the things that we really have to figure out is how much of the cash we are holding versus investing. And this can be decisions that we're making up until the time of going tiny, up until the time that we buy a tiny home. So there can be some savings plans in advance where we have to decide, do we hold cash? Do we invest? How much? And then likewise, if we end up selling a home after the fact, we have to figure out how much cash to hold, how much to invest based on other changes that are in the works. And then when making those decisions, specifically on the what to do with your cash, there are account type decisions. Certainly, we have a lot of different options for where to put our money. So, lots of decisions there that are designed to either hold that money for a longer period of time or a shorter period of time. There are tax opportunities there that I focus on helping folks figure out. All of that is sort of the complexity of what to do with money flowing in and then out of your life, and how much needs to be sort of pooled for certain goals and transitions during that period of time and after. When you change careers, for example, if you're going to self employment, typically you have to figure out how long your ramp up period is going to be and how long it will be before you are making enough money to exceed your expenses. And when we go tiny, expenses change a lot. So they can change a lot in the decrease sense. They can change a lot in the type of expenses if we're traveling a lot more. So understanding what future expenses looks like can be kind of a guessing game, but certainly there are ways to get your hands around kind of what that looks like. And I certainly can help with that too. I wanted to also mention changing needs. So, certainly, as we make this transition, our needs change and the things that we are spending our money on changes. And so, we have to sort of imagine what our future is going to look like and what we are going to need money for in the future that looks different in the past. So, for example, maintenance on tiny homes. What does that look like? Where does that occur? For those folks who take the brave path of building their own tiny home, the need for cash during the build process looks very different than if you were to just buy one outright from a tiny house builder. And then the maintenance costs may look a lot less because you built it, so you know how to fix it. So lots of sort of variable pieces for folks living tiny. So when planning cash flow for what I call a tiny pivot, there are a lot of thoughts about what the budget looks like now, what the spending will look like later, what lumpy sort of needs there are in the middle, and how to pool the cash and deploy the cash towards these important expenses, both now as you're saving and preparing, as you're in that transition, and on the other side of that transition. So, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and for those of you who are only listening, I encourage you to check out this episode on YouTube because I am showing a cash flow sample analysis that is based on one of my case studies on my website. This is Liz, the new chapter traveler's cash flow that I'm showing here on the screen. And this shows a tiny transition where Liz, according to the case study, is in her late 50s and is wanting to be able to be more geographically flexible in order to be closer to her adult children, and also to dial back some of her work in order to focus more on consulting and volunteering. She wants to explore and be able to travel some. And so I have built out this sample cash flow, which you can see if you watch the YouTube, where we can see how that in the year 2023, prior to Liz's transition, she has her salary coming in, and that is her inflow. Her living expenses are estimated at $30,000 a year, so that's part of her outflow. Her housing, because she's still paying a mortgage, is $25,000. This is seen on the right side of the screen with money going out. We see an insurance premium for something she's paying for through work. We see her taxes, and we see her planned savings in her 401k. And so total inflows being 85,000, and then broken out like a waterfall into all the things that she spends money on. Then if we look forward into 2024, this is the opportunity where Liz makes her pivot. She quits her W-2 job and she starts her self-employment. Her self-employment, of course, we know is going to take some time to ramp up. So the first year, her total income from her consulting is $25,000, but she has that inflow from where she sold her house, which had appreciated in value since when she bought it back in 2004. So she had that extra cash come in as an inflow. And so being strategic about this cash that comes in from the sale of a home is really important because she's going to need part of it for a number of years. But at the same time, she wants to make the best decisions with what to do with that to secure her financial situation long term. So we see that she has expenses going out, which are different now because a part of it, $12,000, is her travel in her tiny house. Her housing is much cheaper. We see that lump purchase in this waterfall called a goal of $100,000 tiny house. We see her tax situation, her tax payment is much less because she did not have a significant amount of taxes due from the sale of her primary residence. And because her income is so low, this presents an opportunity to do some very specific planning in this year. Then moving into 2025, the next year, she doesn't have a big chunk of cash coming from the sale of a home. Instead, all she has is her self-employment income and living expenses and travel expenses. And then what happens in that year is she has a negative cash flow. So meaning that she brings in less income than she spends. So this is where that strategic use of that lump sum from her house plays out over the course of a number of years. This is a really great illustration, and this system can really show us what the savings versus investing needs are for folks who are in that transition from tiny. So now that you're in a place where maybe you're feeling like you've gotten all the pieces of the logistics figured out, maybe you've picked out a tiny house builder or you figured out how you're going to build one yourself. Maybe you kind of know where you want to go geographically with that. Maybe you've thought a little bit about what happens with your job. Maybe it doesn't change because you stay in the same area. In any case, what to do about the money part is really what I am here to help with. And this is why I wanted to give you a little bit of knowledge about how to manage cash flow when doing a transition into tiny living. If you like this content, I would love to hear from you, and you can reach out to me through my website at thetinyhouseadvisor.com. To this video, I will put a link for access to this tool that I showed so that you can access it yourself and do some planning on your own. So let me know how you like this. Make sure that you follow the show so that you will continue to get alerts when new content comes out, and let me know what you're thinking. Laura Lynch, Less House, More Moolah podcast. Talk to you again soon.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Less House, More Moolah. To access valuable financial tips and resources tailored to your tiny living journey, join our exclusive community at thetinyhouseadvisor.com. Here you'll find a supportive network of like-minded individuals committed to helping each other navigate the challenges and celebrate the victories of embracing a minimalist lifestyle. So don't miss out on the opportunity to be part of this empowering tribe. Be sure to tune in next Thursday for another insightful episode of Less House, More Moolah, where we'll continue to explore practical solutions and inspiring stories to help you create the life you've always dreamed of.
Please see the show notes for important disclosure regarding the Tiny House Advisor LLC and this episode.